Welcome, everybody. We're here today with Sandie McCoubrey. Sandie is a long friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time. The theme of today's subject today is the importance of networking and lessons from a career in the events industry. So, Sandie McCoubrey, I'm going to introduce you, Sandie, right now.
Thank you.
So, Sandie is not only a good friend of mine, but she's an expert in the events industry. Sandie is a British expat that has the advantage and the joy of living in Corfu in Greece since 2002. She's a very skilled sales and marketing professional with more than 20 years of experience working in exhibitions, events, and project management. She's extremely goal-oriented and committed to success, and her strengths lie in networking, bringing new connections and opportunities to the industry. She has worked also for large corporates like Coca-Cola, Sony, and Reed Exhibitions, and she has traveled extensively through her working career. When the events industry took a major hit with the pandemic, she's done her best to remain stable and balanced, and she still is. And she uses more of her time to write and also increasing and testing her photography skills. And she does watercolor paintings, which is a very pleasant surprise. Her key skills are strategic planning, project management, sales and marketing, and new concepts and ideas. She also has experience in meetings, events, exhibition, travel and tourism, technology. So Sandie has been involved in the events technology sector for quite a while. Luxury, cosmetics, and consumer electronics. She chooses to live by the following words: compassion, sincerity, and empathy. So welcome, Sandie. Welcome to this conversation and to this series.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. I wanted to tell us a little more about you, Sandie, and other than what I already said in my bio.
Yes, I think, well, one little snippet that many people might not know, you might remember, John. I was actually born in Brixton, which is where Shocklogic is based. So I've always had this affinity with Shocklogic, and I'm very close to my mum, and I often talk about the members I look after, or when I looked after Technology Village at IBTM, I'd say my exhibitors, and I always had to use the example of, like the ones in Brixton. So she thinks I only work with you guys, because she always says, like, is it those ones in Brixton, the ones? And she likes your pens as well, the the orange and yellow pens. So I try and get one of those if that's from Brixton, Mum. So we have that.
Yeah, but, we love Brixton.
Yes, of course. And I haven't been there for many years, so I've promised a lot to come and visit you, and I will one day. I will come and see you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you. But I think my background's mainly in marketing. I've got a certificate and diploma in marketing, and that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to do marketing, and I think I kind of fell into selling probably 20 years ago with my move to Greece when I worked at Reed Exhibitions on IBTM. They kept me on as a consultant and asked me to look after or sell the Technology Village. And I thought, well, I've never really sold anything in my life. And it started from there. And I think all my marketing background helped, because I really looked after the exhibitors. There's the online platforms at these events where you have to put your profiles up. I'd often help the exhibitors and actually do it for them, even though I wasn't meant to. But I wanted them to sort of promote themselves as well. So I think gained a lot of trust from the exhibitors I looked after and worked with. So I've sort of over the last years, everyone's seen me as a sales queen or to sell, but my background is really marketing. So I do a bit of both. I do a bit of everything in my working life and work on different various things.
Yeah, your experience, I mean, you have a very interesting recent past experience, because you were involved with the technology village at EIBTM, which put you in
Yeah,
contact with a lot of the event tech, a lot of the new stuff
yeah,
coming out, and a lot of these companies that, you know, some of them have stayed, some of them have
yeah,
disappeared. But then you work with MDI, with
yeah.
Meeting Support Institute, Meeting Design Institute, sorry, and now with MESA, with the Meetings and Event Su- Support
Sport
Association.
association. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is very much in the same vein that makes you a real expert when it comes to this sector or this segment, Sandie. I think that you must have some of the best contacts and when it comes
Yeah.
to this sector. Um,
Yeah.
you are tell me a little bit about MESA. You're one of the co-founders of MESA, the Meetings and Event Support Association.
Yes. We launched that officially is in July. We're a year old. We worked on it for a few months before with yourself as well on the steering committee. That was really born out of the Meeting Design Institute that was with Martin van Est, and when the pandemic hit, it kind of stopped because everything about MDI was about the networking at events. It was always at the fresh dinners at events where our members could get to know each other. You know, we didn't really do anything online then. It was all for anything we did online was for meeting planners and education. It was all about the physical trade show. So when the pandemic hit, it was really, well, what do we do for members? You know, we could do a few Zoom calls. And I think we decided it was time to stop that side of the Meeting Design Institute. And afterwards, I think just, you know, through the pandemic, companies like yourself, or, you know, we got together on Zoom and started saying, we actually miss this. We miss this connection. We miss this networking. We miss talking to each other. And I think that's why a few of us got together and started having the Zoom calls and realized we were supporting each other still. It didn't have to be in a physical event. We sort of grew those, you know, friendships and relationships through Zoom. And we felt there was a need to continue to have something like that. But going back to your earlier point, I worked out earlier that I've worked with tech companies for about 20 years, because when I did move to Corfu and work with the tech village, that was 10 years before. And then I worked with Martin van Est for 9 years, and now with MESA for 1 year. So it's really 20 years that I've been on that kind of tech side working with suppliers. So I was quite horrified to realize how quickly the time's flying, but yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, so that makes you an expert. I understand that you also manage hosted buyer programs for other type of exhibition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've done a few in my time. I mean, I also looked at on IBTM. I used to look after the association program many years ago when we launched that on IBTM. And I worked with Martin Cirk on that. And then when I moved here, I've got a colleague in Athens. So we even did hosted buyer programs on art shows. So it's a very varied experience of what I've done. I like managing those programs because I like looking after people or helping people, whether that's a planner or a supplier. You know, that's where my strength lies, because I'll listen to what they need, and you know who they want to meet as well, what's important for them out of any exhibition or trade show. So yeah, I enjoy that side of it, and instead of just that selling side, I enjoy doing the hosted buyer side as well.
So as somebody that has been in your at the receiving end of your services and your attention, then I must say we always have regarded you as a very complete sort of a professional. So that's the way that we looked at you. Yeah. How did you land in the events industry? What took you there? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier, like when I worked at Sony, that was many years ago. And I think there I was, you know, I started to do marketing. I did a marketing degree, a marketing diploma. I had a very nice manager at the time who said, you know, I'm going to help you. And I think, you know, it moved. I think it was it moved to Weybridge at the time, and there was no opportunities there for me to go into full marketing. So I decided, right, I'm going to look for another job. And I applied for Reed Exhibitions. I met Nikki Mason, who's, she's kind of left the industry now. But I started working on exhibitions like in cosmetics, raw ingredients for cosmetics, even disabled exhibitions. I did all of that. And I started to say, I want to travel. So kind of that led to Nikki speaking to the IBTM director at the time and said, I have the perfect marketing manager for you. And so I moved to Reed Travel division, and then I had so much travel. It was incredible for the next few years. I think we even went to Hong Kong twice in 1 month, and that was with someone you might know, Debbie Stanford.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely.
From IMEX many years ago. So I worked through there, but I think even at Sony, I worked in the broadcast division, and we had to exhibit. So I was an exhibitor as well, which is, I must admit, very hard work. Looking back, it is actually very hard work to be an exhibitor as well. So I think maybe looking back, it's 30 years sort of through where I've been, that journey into that events industry. And obviously into Reed Exhibitions, where you're planning very large exhibitions, and it is hard work. It is very tiring, and a lot of planning goes into that.
And also, I think that there's something very particular with what you've been doing in the last, you said, 20 years or so, which is you represent a group. So almost you have to talk on behalf of, you have to talk to, for example, because I remember one of the great things that you used to do at the MDI, at the Meeting Design Institute, was to find those spaces within the exhibitions, the larger exhibition, the IMXs, the EIBDMs, the Complex, et cetera, where companies like Shocklogic would be represented. So you sort of receiving from us and then passing on, you have, and that middle space is always very, very difficult. I think it requires a lot of tact and a lot of expertise when it comes to networking. How do you see networking as an action? How important do you think that networking is, and do you have any tips that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think obviously networking is hugely important, but I do come back sometimes to having this in networking. There is the word work, and I personally don't see it as work. I think through the years I've had the pleasure to work with so many key influences in the industry, people like yourself, but Rob Davis, even Corbin Ball, so many names. But it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to work with them. And so of course, it's important for a younger person coming into the industry or a new company to build up their network, to, get those connections. But I always see it as it's, for me, it's just a genuine desire to help another person, to introduce them to somebody else, to help build those connections, and then, to potentially walk away. But I've got that network through just a genuine desire to work with those people, or to get to know them. And just going back to some of the sales things, I think even at the Tech Village, I remember trying to sell a tech stand to some potential exhibitors for 7 years, but I never gave up. But it wasn't just walking away and thinking they're not buying from us at the moment, I'm not going to contact them. It was staying in contact, even as a friend, or just if they needed anything else. Of course it mattered if they eventually bought something, but for me at the time it didn't, because I wanted to work with them and get to know them as people. And I think that I've sort of stayed by that for many years and had that in my heart. It's just a genuine desire to get to know somebody, because I do think even if you maybe you go into a networking event as a young person, or people say, right, go and network, how do you go in that room and just suddenly go around and network? Is you should be going in there as you, and just to get to know people, and to speak to them openly about different things. So yes, I do take the I don't see it as work. I see it as a genuine pleasure.
I think also, I mean, by listening to you, it sounds like, you know, those three words that you live by, which are
Yeah,
compassion, sincerity, and empathy.
yeah,
I feel that there's one there that you can add, which is integrity, because it sounds to me
yeah.
what you were
Thank you.
saying is that because this is so aligned in you, this is so part of who
Yeah,
you are. You want to go with there's a real sense of what can I do for you, um,
absolutely. Yeah,
attitude, and that sort of tends to open doors. So, you know, if you networking has, like you said, has the word working in it, and
yeah,
it should be net enjoying or something, you know. Uh,
yeah, maybe.
um, how do you have any tips or anything in particular that you do when you want to find connections, and you want to build trust with
Yeah.
your customers or partners or colleagues or et cetera, et cetera?
I think I'm in a lucky position with the network I have. If I need to meet someone else, and you can always meet more people. I do not know everyone. Some people might say you know everyone if you're at an exhibition. You just don't. I'm still meeting new connections. So I have the honor to be able to ask some of my network, do you know someone that can help on this? And I think that just comes back again from me being able to help those people over those years. That the tips I would say is, really again, be genuine, be authentic, and when you introduce someone, be able to walk away as well. You don't need to gain anything out of that connection. If they want to update you on how that connection went or what happened from it, they will. But walk away from the email where you've connected them, or walk away from the trade show, leave them to it, to be able to talk and work together. And quite often, sometimes if someone would say to me, do you know someone that could help me with? And I think, be honest if you don't think you can, or if you don't know someone, don't pretend to. But I think even then you will find within a few seconds that there's an opportunity. You think, hold on, I know someone that's going to be able to help you, and I want to introduce you. And I think it's just important for that genuineness and to be able to walk away. But I have another example. I was thinking about you the other day on this, because you might not remember, it was at IMEX Frankfurt, obviously pre-pandemic, but a few years before the pandemic, and I was working with MDI. We had a new member. It was a younger member, a young company, and he was very sort of lost in this big maze of stands and this whole new world, this new exhibition. He'd never been there before. And so I was talking with him, and he said, I don't know anyone. And I was thinking, okay, and it will take time to build that up, because you do not meet everyone in that first exhibition. It does take years. But I said, I will walk around with you and try and introduce you to some people. And one of the first people I saw was you. And I just said, right, you've got to meet John. And it was just a pure example, because when you met him, you said straight away, I know someone that can help you. And you immediately introduced them to somebody else. And from the rest of his day, he told me afterwards, that connection led to another connection. And he was so busy. And it's just trying to help and trying to bring, and you're very much aligned with what I am as well on that, because you're very genuine on that as well. But I think a lot of the industry is, most of the people we work with are like that. They will want to introduce you to somebody. So, but I was remembering that, and you're very much like that. And the other thing I think also is what I find quite funny at trade shows is it's so busy, some of those aisles during the day, but when you're walking somewhere and you can immediately bump into somebody, and then somebody else will know one of the two of you that are standing there, then someone else would join that knows one of the three of you, then someone else joins that knows one of the four of you, and sometimes you end up blocking the aisle because there's like 10 people sort of all talking to each other. But that's kind of the way it happens. It's not where you go out deliberately to network. You're just genuinely talking with people and meeting people, and you're building those connections. But that's why I say again, for me, it's not a tool or it's not work. It's just something that comes very naturally, I think, to all of us. And I think if we all thought about it like that, it does come naturally.
I think also that you're a perfect example, and what you're saying is also it's a perfect example of when you are in integrity, right? And so what you say is what you feel, and you live by your values. You're thinking, because there's such a cacophony of messages, right? Because a lot of what we receive is fear-based, meaning,
Yeah.
have you been able to meet all your targets this during this show? How many, can you give me a number of the number of people? And not sometimes this quantitative sort of measurements miss the qualitative effect of all of this. I mean, you really reminded me of that episode, and it has happened to me more than once that I've done that, and I just let it go. I put them in contact with somebody, put this person in contact with these two companies in contact, I let it go. And then months or sometimes years, sometimes many years later, it comes back to me saying, well, by the way, I was told by this person, say, I was in the panel that were deciding who was going to be the next supplier for this thing. And you were one of the bidding companies. And you were so kind to me when I was, and this was a person that actually lost their, at this point, this person lost their documents. So I put him in contact with somebody, but when I met him again, he had lost his documents, or he got pickpocketed in Barcelona.
Oh,
and
okay.
and at the time he was a supplier, but then he went on to work at an association. And we were bidding for this job, and he said, this company, I mean, these people are great. I mean, and she said, and he said, this guy, he went with me to the police. I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't know what to do, etc., etc. He really, really, and at the time, of course, the exhibition has a beginning and an end. And what I tend to say to newcomers to the industry is, if you show up one day late, that building is empty. Everything that was going on is gone. There's not even, there would be a different exhibition maybe, or nothing, or you just find this empty floor. So you have to make it work and understand that there is this window where you want things to happen. And what I tend to say to them is, prepare as well as you can so you can execute during that project. And one of the values at Shocklogic is over prepare and then go with the flow, right? So
very much.
And for me, it's also something that the members of my team, Lorena, who you know, sees a lot, because we prepare so much. For example, if I'm gonna present at an event or online, we really work on it in order to be able to make it look easy and natural, right? So we tend to say over prepare and then go with the flow, so you can then meet the 1, 2, 3, 4 people being together there, and then that generates an energy and creates a path of connections that sometimes we have no idea where they're going to end up.
And you didn't know it was going to happen. But look at your example of helping that person, because obviously you speak Spanish, but you took your time to help that person out of a genuine thing. It wasn't work for you, but in the end, that person became part of your network that became a good, part of work in the end.
And we it turned into a contract. Not only turned into a good connection and a good friend in the industry, because at the time, he didn't represent a source of revenue for us, because he was another supplier, and he was supplying a service or a product that really, we couldn't do much with. But I knew of people that could use his product or his service, and then I put him in contact with that. So it sounds very much that is the way that you operate. But it seems also, Sandie, that it comes so natural to you because of this intention to connect. intention to, I call it 1 + 1 can be 4.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So you meet somebody, and that connection generates a connection that could generate a connection, you know?
Yeah,
And
always.
yeah.
But even in new industries, when I moved here and I worked on the art shows, I mean, I know very little about art, I promise you. And I was looking after the hosted buyer group, but I didn't know anyone in that industry. When I walked into that trade show, I didn't know the exhibitors. I looked at their art, but I certainly don't know who they were. A lot of them were Greek, some were international. But by the end of it, looking after the buyers, just by email or helping them, of course, I started to get into that industry. Of course, I started to, build the connections there. But, it's not, again, it wasn't to go to work. I know we all have sales targets. I know it more than a lot of people. So I also work on a luxury magazine, selling advertising, which I never thought I would do. We all have that, but I go back to this. If they haven't got the budget there to do something with you, then it doesn't mean just move on from them and forget them, or not talk to them again. It's also they're human beings. We all have feelings, and through emails sometimes you can maybe hear if they're struggling a bit, and it's just sending a decent email and let me know if I can help in any other way. And again, I've lived by this for a long time, and I'm proud of it. I don't want to change, because I think it's done me well and looked after me through the years. And I have some very, very good friends in the industry. I mean, you're one of them, of course. Rob Davidson is another good friend of mine. I worked with him on the industry trends report at IBTM for 10 years. And I've got to know him very, very well. And through the lockdown, we had I must admit, we had some rum parties here, not with Rob Davidson, but Rob Davidson come to Corfu last year for a holiday and came round to our house just for a few drinks, and we were going out to dinner, and he brought a bottle of rum, and I looked at him and I said, and because he remembered that we had a rum party through the lockdowns, he brought a bottle of rum. And it's things like that. I have some very genuinely lovely friends through the industry, just through that network.
I think that your friendship with Martin Banesta and your connection with Martin also, I mean, that being absolutely. Yeah, and the quality of that, and everything that has sort of generated, right?
Yeah.
What a wonderful. So it sounds to me, Sandie, that there's a lot of you take care of this.
Yeah.
So then with this, then to execute, but it's almost like this is leading the way, or the energy comes from here, right? Do you do anything regarding wellness, or how do you take care of yourself? I mean, the events industry is the fifth. It says it's the fifth most stressful industry in the world. So what do you do?
I would like to know first, do you know what the first 4 are? Because it must be, what are the first 4?
And one is service, soldier.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, fire person. I think it's policeman, and there's another one. I'll tell you. I have all 5 listed.
Because there must be there's obviously surgeons as well, but yes, I'm quite surprised that the event planning is fifth, but I do understand it. Wow.
ER, emergency personnel.
Wow.
I would have thought. That. Yeah, we're 5th. I would have thought that.
I mean, there's also airline.
Airline controllers, right? Flight controllers. I thought that there would be. Actually, they're like 7th.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that makes me very proud that we're all in this industry and alive and kicking. And but
Yes.
you asked about wellness. Something I did during, I mean, obviously during the pandemic, I effectively lost my job with MDI. When MDI stopped, it's all very tough. My husband had no work because he works, he does building for Greeks outside, and of course, no one wanted him anywhere near his house for, so we were struggling as well. But a good friend of mine from the industry, from ACS Audio Visuals, actually, she used to work there and was one of the exhibitors at the Tech Village. Jill Sheen, she lives in Netherlands, and she actually sent me a book, and I've got it here. It's like I prepared one earlier for you, but I had it because I was looking at it earlier. Have you ever heard of Julia Cameron?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The Artist's Way, and she
The
sent
Artist
that to
Way,
me.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah, and
fantastic.
she sent that to me on June 2020. So luckily I had this during the pandemic, and you have to go through lots of like I think there's 10 or 12 weeks where you have to do things every week. So I'd sort of leave it a little bit on the first week and then panic by the Saturday or Sunday that I haven't done all these exercises. But I really started to work through this, and it just made me, I have what I would call like a wellness toolkit now. So if I start to feel just a little bit unbalanced, I actually recognize it now. Maybe not immediately, but maybe even a day later or a few hours, I think, well, something's off, something's not right. So I will go back to some of the lessons I learned in the Artist's Way. And one of the main things it made you do is write morning pages. So you write three A4 sheets by hand, not on, not typing. But every morning you write those. And I did give it up for 6 months, I have to admit, a little while ago, and I've started it again now. But it gives you a real focus for the day of what you want to do, what you're feeling. Instead of just going to that office, you kind of get everything out on paper before, if you're not feeling right, or if you're motivated, or if you're worried about something, you'll normally end up writing to yourself, you shouldn't worry about that. And by the time you finish the pages, you feel more relaxed. So I do those, but it also showed you, you have an artist date. So that's where I started photography, water painting, because I thought, well, I have to do this week. I have to do this on Wednesday, and I have to try it, even though I just didn't want to, and absolutely loved doing it. So there was things like there I did, and listening to podcasts as well. And there's one podcast, Happy Place with Fern Cotton. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, but they're so uplifting.
I know Fern. I really like Fern Cotton. I'm gonna take note of that.
Happy Place podcasts are very good. And there's quite a few with monks actually, and they're some of the most uplifting podcasts I've ever heard. And always afterwards, even if when I'm watching or listening to them, I think, oh, this isn't really for me, I'll listen through it, and by the end of it, I've always taken at least one thing out of that podcast that helps me, or I think, wow. And so I think Artist's Way has contributed a lot to my own balance and well-being, throughout the pandemic, and I've carried it into now. And just reading uplifting books, but other books. I Eckhart Tolle. What is it? The Power of Now. And there's another one, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, I think. But books like that, no, I try to read them at the same time as another book, not together, but on my Kindle, I'll have, 2 books going at the same time. So I'll always try and have a more uplifting book or something that's going to help me. And I know if I don't do any of these things, that something will start to imbalance me. So I've sort of kept that beside me. And a very important one for me is, for the last 2 or 3 years, no news on Wednesdays. I don't look at any news. We're not allowed to have news on in the house, or the radio or anything. And I do not listen to news every Wednesday, and I love it.
Oh wow!
And,
I'm gonna put that one down. I'm gonna jot that one down.
Yeah,
No news
that's
on
a very good
Wednesdays.
exercise. And try to load on the news on Thursday morning, because it will just depress you again.
Exactly. Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, I think that we I do a lot of work with mindfulness and myself, and it has, well, it literally saved my life about 12 years ago, and then I never left it. It turned into a habit, and now I have been able to weave it into the DNA of Shocklogic. So
Good. Yeah.
is the way that we communicate and the things that we do. So it helps me tap into one of the words that you use for that you live for, which is my compassion. It helped me to as I feel more grounded, I'm also more open, I'm more giving, I'm more patient, you know. So wonderful. So would you say that this was something that you would have done, or would you have read a book like that pre-pandemic? Was this in your horizon, or with the pandemic that made a little shift? So you try something new, or would that be in the realm?
I think I'd always read some form of self-help books, or, for many years, or things to learn. But the artist way, I think it just helped it arriving at the same time. My friend Jill, who I mentioned, she wanted to go on that journey. She said, would you do it with me? And she bought the book for me and sent it. And it made me do so many other things I've never even considered. I've always wanted to paint and do watercolors. I had them upstairs, but just never got out that brush. And but I did it, and it was a lovely painting, and I was very proud of it afterwards. I mean, I'm no artist, but it was really good. But there's a lot of things in there that I probably wouldn't have tried before, that it forced me to try. And you can only learn. You can work out what you like doing, what you don't like, and but at least you've tried. And I think that's really important to try. And I even did a watercolor painting, and I wanted to paint an elephant, so I thought I'll paint a baby elephant, and it turned out really well. So I'm quite shocked.
That's fantastic, and the amazing, right? The importance that our connections have, the importance that our friends have on us, right? They open doors that normally we wouldn't have thought about trying. I feel also when it comes to networking, right, and to connecting and to what you do, which is working with others and connecting with people, the better you are, the better that the easier the connection comes, right? Because I tend to say that kindness and compassion start here, right? So I always think about, the airplane when they say put your oxygen mask before you help your children. And then and also there's a fantastic African adagio that says, be wary of a naked man that offers you a shirt. And it is hard to give kindness and compassion if we're not kind and compassionate to ourselves, right? So and you wonder how would that work? How do you do? You don't become depleted when we pay more attention to the other than to ourselves.
But it should make you happy as well. If you're helping someone else, it should make you, it does. It makes you feel good about yourself. I think I think I have problems asking for help if I need help, or, that's where I have problems. But I think the good connections, they'll always find, they'll know something's wrong anyway. And but I think, even if you feel low or if something's not right, you have to be able to speak to some of those connections and say, look, this is actually the way I'm feeling, which that's a hard thing to do. But that they're always there for you, and you're always there for them. And it's very important, not in that just our industry, John, but every industry the world over, and with your family and friends.
Absolutely. At Shocklogic, another one of our values is that we tend to say, we use this 4 words, we use integrity, responsibility, generosity, and compassion. And we tend to we use those 4 words as a compass on how we want to build every relationship. So and it is very much in line with you were saying. I mean, the things that you have said really comprise those? I mean, you're talking about giving, which is generosity. You're talking about taking action, which is responsibility. You're talking about already. You talk about compassion and putting yourself in the shoes of the other. And at the beginning, we mentioned integrity. So it's really interesting that these two things are so aligned. I think that there is a little. I think that we're becoming more and more connected. It's more common to have this kind of conversation, to say the word compassion and to say the word kindness and empathy in a business environment. But I think that one amazing thing with you, which is something that I've always felt, is that you live it. I've always felt that with you as a at the beginning was I want to be exhibitor in the tech area, and then eventually becoming an exhibitor through you at IBTM, and then the rest of our
part of my community. Martin Van Ness said, I think when the pandemic was and we were talking about letting MDI go, and of course I was upset, but it was my decision as well, because I really felt at the time, we can't go forward the way we are. And I wasn't crying, but he could hear the choked up voice I had, and he said, you have to let them go sometime. You have to let them grow up and be on their own. And I said, I can't. The membership, the supplier side will always be such a huge part of me now. I mean, it's a long time. So in my babies.
Yeah, exactly. And many of these companies you saw, like, I don't know, maybe Event Eye, the Norwegian company. So you saw them from the first time they walked into the show. I can picture that. Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see how they're growing and what they're doing. So I love seeing that as well. And when I looked after the tech village, you could only have like a small, very standard stand. So otherwise you have to go on the main floor. But if any of the exhibitors started to buy their own huge stands, you had to realize, well, actually, they're doing well. You've got to let them go, and it's good news for them. So.
Well, maybe we could explain a little bit to any startup or growing or existing tech company. What do you do at MDI, and what are you looking to do at Mesa? So if I am a event tech company, and I heard about Mesa, and how would you put it forward for me so I can decide if it's interesting for me to become a member of it?
I think with MDI, and very much what Mesa is now based on, what MDI was always very good at, what we were very good at, is bringing you the connection. So as a young startup company that doesn't really know the industry, haven't really launched properly into the marketplace, it's the connections that we would bring to you, and it's exactly the same at Mesa. And you've seen it yourself, John, on the calls we have regular monthly calls for the teams, and more ones for the founders as well. The connections that are made within that Zoom room, imagine what it's going to be like when we go to a trade show and sit next to dinner together, how powerful it's going to be. But these are made in a Zoom room, and you meet someone, and within a few minutes they've said we should have a different call, and they go on to do a different call and create other business. And I think I even saw it with you when you shared with Mesa many years ago, with MDI, and you were exhibiting next to someone else, and I think it might have been Johnny, actually, your son, and I think he was going to lunch or to evening dinner with the exhibitor or the member next to him, and I said, where are you two going? And they said, and I said, oh, good for you. So, and I think you started some kind of business together, and that's just perfect, and that's what it's like. So anyone out there, a startup company, or even not a startup company that just wants a community around them, join us and speak to John for our details, I think, and come on board.
Brilliant, brilliant. So if we summarize, so what Mesa would do for me as a tech company that coming into the market would be, it would connect me with other like-minded individuals, first of all.
Absolutely.
There are some amazing calls for the founders and leaders of the company, not only, so you got spaces for the team, for the members of the team, but there are also fantastic spaces for founders, which it could be such a lonely place in a way, to find other people that are going through the same thing. Some of them could be companies similar to yours. Some of them could be complementary companies, but being in the same space, I find it very interesting because it provides a common thread on what's going on. We're experiencing similar things on the same industry. We understand similar type of customers, and then it's how to make those connections. And one of the amazing things that you did at MDI was the representation at the events. That's something that brought a lot of was the capacity to connect, but also it was if you weren't able to go to the exhibition yourself, you had somebody there almost like representing you.
Absolutely. Running the appointment. I remember doing that for you as well. I even remember in Las Vegas, and but you were there walking the show, and all I remember is seeing the orange shirt, and I was able to introduce you as well. But
exactly, and you said to me, "Oh, this person passed by. Here's the card," and then that was
anything
very,
to help
very
on that.
useful.
And I think just to sort of, if we're finishing as well, is, a very important part where you say about different suppliers like yourself will get together. I think you'll always have a different viewpoint on what's going on in the industry. Not everyone has the same viewpoint or the same knowledge or has heard the same things about the trends or what's happening. So just by talking to each other, you'll say, I didn't know that, and you'll be able to say something else. So together you get that group knowledge of where everything's going and what to look out for and how you can help someone else.
Great. Okay. We getting to the end of this interview, and so thank you, Sandie, for your time and for your candidness and for sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for listening to us. We invite you to some other of the interview series, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Sandie.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Lorena, as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.